Hello, and welcome to today's WTA webinar. This is a webinar presented by WTA's Technology Advisory Board on building a better NOC. My name is Randall Barney. I'm Director of Certification and Membership for the World Teleport Association. I'm joined today by Robert Bell, who is Executive Director for the association. What we do every day is advocate for the interest of teleport operators, as well as promoting the excellence in their operations, their technology, and their business practices. Our webinar today is based on a report that is available on our website of the same title, and we'll be talking about that in just a moment. The Technology Advisory Board was formed to address the rising challenges and opportunities that our leading members feel are really changing the nature of the game. The purpose of the board is to give them guidance on what are the most important advances you need to keep an eye on, and what are some of the appropriate technologies for the kind of needs you have. Membership of the advisory board is open to industry patron and leader members. If you want more information on this, send an email to me at rbarney@worldteleport.org. So today's agenda. After this introduction, we're going to cover some of the key insights from the published report, and then we'll launch into a discussion with today's panelists. I would also like to thank our industry leader members who make possible our research reports and webinars. They are Eutelsat, Intelsat, Kratos, Liquid Intelligent Technologies, and SES. And I'll now turn this over to Robert Bell to discuss the key takeaways from the report. Robert?
Thank you, Randall, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone who's joined us. We so appreciate having you with us and sharing some of the insights from this report and also from things that didn't even come up in the report. So if you were to go through this, these are sort of the high points you would walk away with. And this report, by the way, was authored by one of our panelists, so we'll be hearing more from him. First of all, perhaps this is no surprise to anybody who's actually in this business, but NOCs today are challenged amazingly by the need to manage this fast-growing range of new services, of multiple vendors, many of whom are tied into your systems in ways they never were before, remote access for your employees and your vendors, cloud integration, the list goes on, seems to go on and get longer every single month. Despite all the emphasis on digital transformation and its very high demand, I mean, that term came from nowhere and is suddenly on everyone's lips, NOC operators ultimately still remain the critical element in high performance. The human factor, especially when things go bad, I've often visited control rooms where everybody's sitting quietly doing nothing, all the lights are green, and I usually say to somebody, so what's it like when the lights start turning red? And they'll usually just sort of roll their eyes and say, okay, there are hard times. So you really do depend upon that human factor. But that said, the future NOC will definitely be more automated than it is today. And it's going to be necessary to deal with third-party services, with LEO-MEO constellations, cloud services, things literally of a complexity and speed that we can't expect human beings to keep up with. They're going to be there watching to make sure that something doesn't go wrong, because of course, in automation, the old rule applies, to err as human, to really mess things up takes a computer. And in that setting, one of the reasons that we formed this technology advisory board is because the relationships with technology vendors are becoming more and more critical to determining how you're going to adapt all of this. And so the extent to which we can create really productive relationships between our service providers and our technology providers, a real partnership as opposed to just a sales relationship, is really going to help determine everyone's success. And finally, and this is kind of an interesting one that I certainly didn't expect, future NOCs may be primarily virtual or remote. And we're actually going to see a bit of an example of that in this webinar, with automation handling the majority of issues and a remote NOC team managing the complex ones, the ones that do require human beings to take a deeper dive and learn more about it. So that's going to be a big, big trend as things increasingly virtualize, as we move from fixed hardware to virtual hardware running on commodity servers. is really the trend to keep your eye on, particularly when it comes time to make that next big investment in a system to drive your network operation center. So we are joined today by three people who know this topic backwards and forwards and are really in the trenches in dealing with the rising complexity. They are Angus Blackwood, who is Managing Director of Hawk Media Partnership, has a very long career working for a number of teleport operators and service providers, and is also the author of this report, Building a Better NOC. He's joined by Sergey Raber, who is the Chief Operating Officer for Access Networks, that company that's been formed from the merger of a couple of other well-known teleport operators, and again managing now a multi-region, if not global, operation with that same complex drive for new services as everyone else is facing. And finally, Carolyn DeVos, who's the Chief Operations Officer at SAT ADSL, which has taken that topic of that concept of virtualization in controlling the network and providing access to it to a whole new level. And so we're very pleased to have all of them with us today. So let us proceed to a discussion with my friends and colleagues here, Angus Blackwood, Sergey Raber, and Carolyn DeVos. So welcome all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Could you start by just introducing yourselves briefly and telling us a bit about your current NOC operations or your experience with them? Why don't we start with you, Angus?
Okay, thank you, Robert. So I run Hawk Media Partnership. We provide lots of support services and challenging project resolution to teleport operators and broadcasters and many in those industries. I've now certified over 20 teleports in the World Teleport Association certification program. Over the last 5 years, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm now on a recertification cycle and seeing all the improvements that a lot of the teleport operators are putting in place. And I guess probably need to say that I worked for Arqiva for 15 years, running a lot of their teleports. And perhaps also add, most recently, I designed and built a new teleport, a new NOC, a master control room for Encompass in the UK to host 38 positions in their new Chiswick London Media Centre. So that's a bit about me.
Excellent, and thank you for mentioning that. You were actually our very first auditor to join our program, and we really appreciate all you've done for us. Sergey, how about you?
Yeah, I started 15 years ago with CTEL, and by that time it was in the startup phase. And over the years, we through several M&As, integrating companies and services from other teleports into our infrastructure. And now recently, 2 years ago, also merging with a bigger company from Colombia, AccessSat, and forming now an Access Networks. And for sure, also NOC was undergoing all these steps, integrating new infrastructure, taking care about multiple locations, and being responsible for more and more new services. So yeah, that gave me a little bit of experience of how the NOC services can be adjusted to the changing situation and so on, so we can share it during the discussion later.
Just a little bit of experience, I'm sure, Sergey.
Yeah.
Carolyn, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your approach to the NOC operation question?
Yes, indeed. Good afternoon or morning, everybody. So I am Caroline. I'm one of the co-founders of SAT ADSL, a company we created a bit more than 10 years ago. In the beginning, our plan was to resell satellite bandwidth, but we very quickly grow to another level, and we developed a platform, the NextSat platform, which is an aggregator of satellite bandwidth and satellite services. So today, that platform is connected to already 20 teleports around the world. It's basically a full OSS BSS, which is almost 100% virtual. So we built this up during the 10 last years. And in my team, which is then the operations team, in the beginning we just had one person, and today we have 6 people. Those people are seated around the world. 2 of these people I've never met, so they're fully working remotely, but they're still working very fine. So yeah, in terms of NOC operations, virtual NOC operations, I think we're pretty much very experienced with that. And of course, we interact with the teleports. They have their own NOC operation centers as well, and somehow we all work together.
Somehow remotely, virtually, we all work together. Yeah, we've gotten good at that. And it's, again, a very interesting, well, you have a very interesting business design, as I've said many times. And using the words OSS, BSS there is pretty important, because increasingly for this industry to succeed, it's going to have to think in those terms, which it really has never particularly used before. Let's talk a little bit about the issues in building a better NOC. The physical and the information systems design of a NOC has a big impact on its ability to ensure high quality service. That's almost a ridiculous thing to say, it's so obvious, but nonetheless, what are some examples of how that design or redesign of a NOC can contribute to a higher performance at the same or lower cost? Carolyn, why don't we just start with you?
Well, in our case, this is a little bit, I would say, more specific or more general, because of course, we connect teleports. They all have their own NOC. So they provide really the operations regarding the satellite. What we have with NextSat is really a unique portal, which is connected to all the information through the teleports, through the other NOCs, right? And which allows us really to become a kind of virtual teleport, which is accessible to all the players in the value chain, from satellite operator to the end user. So we have different levels of accesses, and this is something that we really develop day by day. We continue to increase this transparency, openness, and I would say automation at all levels of the value chain. So this, of course, cannot be done just as a SATI DSL. We do this in collaborations with all the teleports, but also for them, this is an added value, because it integrates also third-party services, which other NOCs would not have available. So in terms of uniqueness, SATI DSL provides with NextSat really this unique portal, which is virtual, and you can access it anywhere on the world. So basically, you do not need to have a control room with a lot of computers and a lot of screens. Everything is accessible through one entry.
So you are the information systems design for your customers.
That's what we want to be. Yes, that's what we really intend to be, to aggregate all the operators around the world onto the platform.
Got it. Thank you. Sergey, how about you? What are examples that you've seen in your work of designing the right physical and information systems for one of your NOCs, and what its impact is?
Yeah, here we started, as I mentioned, with just one teleport in Germany, and NOC was located at the same place. But with the time, when we started adding additional teleports across the world, and also our team in the NOC started growing, and not all the members are sitting here in Germany, and same as Carolyn mentioned, there are also some people which I never met, meanwhile, working for us. But the challenge is that in the beginning, it was not so important to have remote access to devices, because you can go and do changes here manually. So with the time, we need to adjust everything to be controlled from everywhere. Means we have a VPN where every NOC member can connect from remote and have access to possibilities of management of nearly all equipment that can be remotely managed. For sure, for some changes you still need to be here, so we need to maintain a small team available at every location. But like access to spectrum analyzers from remote, modem management from remote, cable switching by using matrices or monitoring of broadcast services. You know, in early days you had these rooms with many screens, but now it's all possible by using streaming and routing streams to everywhere you need it. That's from one side, and from another side, for sure, you all know that the industry is changing, and especially in the data business, we are moving from big fat links to last mile access. And let's say, I don't know if it's applicable to everyone, but here, an average link 5 or 10 years ago was maybe 10 meg by 10 meg or 20 meg by 5 meg, and now it's more like 1 meg to 512. It means that with the same turnover, with the same facilities, we are now managing like 10 by a factor of 10 more customers than previously. Means that we need to introduce automation to make work of our NOC easier. And yeah, we are trying to aggregate information in single databases. Like earlier, we were using dedicated system for monitoring of services, dedicated system for providing statistics, dedicated system for ticket processing, dedicated system as a CRM, and now we are trying to integrate all these systems together so that there is no need to enter information of every customers in different systems. We try to make everything centralized. Okay, if you get a new customer, you put it and register in one place, and then it appears everywhere. So this is where we are going right now with the recent developments, and this is what is mainly driving our NOC these days. Yeah.
Well, good luck with that. That kind of integration is extremely difficult, which I don't need to tell you. Just a quick question. I'm very interested in what you said about how the capacity demands per service have declined, because we normally think of it as being ever more, ever larger, ever larger. What do you believe is making that happen with your customers, where 10 by 10 meg shrinks down to 1 by 512?
Yeah, this is because the nature of business is changing, and earlier we were mainly dealing with ISPs, providing them trunk links, mostly in Africa. And now fiber is down to any major ISP. So there is no more need for ISPs to buy capacity via satellite. But in contrast, reselling this capacity to their end customers is becoming a challenge for them, especially again in Africa, where terrestrial infrastructure is underdeveloped. So keeping this in mind, the business is changing from providing these trunk links to providing access to every single location, which does not require the same amount of bandwidth as ISP requires it.
That's just very, very interesting. Yeah, it's a great example of adapting to the need as the market shifts underneath you. Angus, you talked about how you just had designed a NOC for Encompass in the UK, and I don't know if you want to talk about that or not, but what are some of the physical and information systems design issues that you think are greatest importance?
Well, it's very interesting hearing Sergey talk about all the platforms and the plethora of systems, because I think that's a very common problem, and that's certainly something that came across during the research as well. In that teleport NOCs are typically growing because there's advantages of having scale. So with the NOCs growing, operating more platforms and more Earth stations, then the number of platforms typically grows, especially if you bring into consideration the legacy systems sitting beside new systems. So one thing that came across very strongly with the redesign, and what a lot of teleport operators are thinking about now, is an overarching monitoring and control system where you can bring together all the key information from the various platforms that the NOC operator is sitting in front of, maybe 20 or 30 systems. How can they manage 20 or 30 systems with lots of different types of alarms and screens in front of them? If they have a single overarching system, it's much easier for them. And I think it was brought home during one interview when somebody said it's all about, a NOC is all about getting the right information to the right person at the right time and in the right way, so it can be read and interpreted and actioned. And I think that for me is core. It's the information systems part of the NOC is absolutely core. Obviously, people are key, and we'll come on to them later. But the information systems and the flow of data and the flow of information, and again the flow of information back out to the customer, and how a lot of teleport operators are dealing simply using apps like WhatsApp now, just to get messages out to customers in a really easy way that's very ubiquitous. Everybody has WhatsApp, well, most people have WhatsApp, and so you can guarantee that you're going to reach your audience if you send a message via WhatsApp. So I think there's a real drive towards using new tools, but also using aggregating tools to allow for the consolidation of all the equipment in larger NOCs, and that's the main kind of drive that I've been seeing.
That's very interesting. Actually, there's a related question because come from our listeners, and this goes, you've all raised this. How do you deal with the challenge of coordinating remote NOC operations? You know, in terms of the variety of tools that are available to you. The person notes, we got experience using a variety of tools during the highest points of the pandemic, but our observation is that we get still better performance when operators are sitting in the same room. What do you think about that, Angus?
Well, that's really topical, and it has been very topical for the last 2 years. I think absolutely you can't replace being next to somebody in a room and being able to brainstorm and diagnose a tricky technical problem. You know, sitting beside the engineer who can drill down and has that knowledge is absolutely you know, invaluable. But these days you can't necessarily have that, not just because of COVID, but because engineers are all over the place, and because of, again, teleport operators growing, their engineers aren't necessarily in the same place as the NOC, and they don't need to be. So there, again, during the research, a lot of people talked about this, and they talked about using comms tools like Teams and just video conferencing. We're so used to video conferencing now, they just have it on permanently. If they're remote or they're working from home, so it's like you're sitting next to your colleague. So that's one of the ways that teleport operators are getting around those issues.
That's a very, I was thinking while you were talking, I was thinking about exactly that it's not going to be very long before we're all going to just have to get used to having a set of little thumbnails in the corner of our computer. And these are the people we're dealing with in our team. Sergey or Carolyn, do you have any comments in terms of that challenge of the remote operations?
Yes, well, first of all, I'm not even able to compare with before or after COVID, because basically our team always has been remote. It is difficult to find people that have the knowledge of satellite communication and NOC operations and satellite communication. This still is a niche job, really. Yeah? So it's not so easy to find this kind of people. Also to find the people with the good people skills, very responsive, etc. So we're happy to have people around the world, also because we need to have them at different time zones available at different time zones. But the way we work in my team, and that might look very old-fashioned, but this is really something that works. We still work with Skype. So we have a Skype room where everybody's in there, and anything. It can be also the joke that you usually do around the coffee corner, you know, at the coffee machine or whatever. You sometimes, or when you are in a team meeting with other colleagues and you make a joke about the colleague, you know, then it goes into that chat room. It even happens like that. So whenever we have a problem and it's the guy sitting in Mali or India or in Portugal or in Belgium, we just put it there and everybody's aware. And sometimes it's even more efficient because you don't speak to one person, the one sitting next to you, but you speak to the entire team. So you even share knowledge and share and really learn by doing, by having the entire team involved. We even do this at company level. So we even involve the sales guys in the chat room, or we involve the development guys in the chat room if needed. Sometimes it's really like, some of us call it a Christmas tree. You have like these chats pumping all the time. We try to avoid having them with the customers, but we sometimes also need to have them with the teleports or the NOC centers we are connected to. So for us, this remains, it has never been different, and this is our human factor, and this will always probably have to remain. We won't be able to avoid that kind of things. We can only avoid it by preventing incidents and preventing need of human intervention. And that's what probably everybody around the world tries to do, or tends to do, to have a super fantastic incident-free environment. But still, that aspect, we do it, like, we manage it like this. And I like it also because I like also to talk to people, and we learn from each other. So I don't know, Sergey. I know Sergey.
It's a very different world. It's a different skill set, interestingly enough, because our little team is all virtual as well. And you have to learn that you're going to be interrupted a lot by things going on your screen. But okay, as long as it's not too intense, it works. Sergey, any final thoughts on that? Since
luckily, I just wanted to add that luckily we observed a huge development of collaboration tools in the last couple of years, and really what was not possible 3 years ago is easily manageable now. So we are managing shifts via special tools, and we can share files, have built-in wiki, and it's really much easier than a couple of years ago. And I want to even mention that some of the things of using collaboration tools is bringing advantages of let's say direct teamwork. Like, for example, if all engineers are sitting in the same room and they agree on something quickly, and you don't know what exactly was agreed and so on. Now with collaboration tools, everything is documented. I can step back and check, okay, on this day they decided this, and he mentioned to the customer this, and so on. It's so much easier to check and have control. So as mentioned, it's not only disadvantage, it's also advantage in some point of view.
Well, it is. I still remember the moment when I suddenly realized that my email system was a gigantic database, and I thought, oh my God, everything we've ever done is in there. So yes, exactly. Let's move on. One of the things that I find fascinating going on right now in our business is that service providers are increasingly being required to manage services that are not just their own, but literally, providing customers with that end-to-end visibility, regardless of who owns the infrastructure, as well as integrating third-party services like cloud and high throughput satellites, where you're not buying megabytes. I'm sorry, you're not buying megahertz. You're buying megabits. How have you, first of all, have you faced that challenge, and secondly, how have you handled that for a customer? And Sergey, why don't we start with you?
Yes, you're right that the situation is changing here. And in the beginning, we were migrating just from a single servers, let's say, to a virtual infrastructure. Now, meanwhile, this infrastructure is migrating into the cloud. And also here, there are advantages, especially if we are working with distributed departments, because connectivity for customers is in many cases better in the cloud. And right now we are already planning to move some of our services which needs to be accessed from everywhere in the world into the cloud. Also, another important topic which I wanted to mention in this regard is that, you know, in the beginning, most of the equipment was managed with SNMP, which is still the most important standard which we are using in the network. But when communicating with third parties providers, we see that in many cases it's not enough to use SNMP because we need interaction in both ways. So now we are migrating from SNMP to API. And it gives you much more possibilities to, let's say, integrate all services that you are getting from third-party providers into your single customer portal, make them visible to the customer in, let's say, in one window according to our internal standard. This is a big challenge, but luckily, again, API is making it possible, and so this is another direction we started recently, and we are currently trying to develop it and get everything integrated into one database, one system.
Well, the whole story of our time in this service provider sector is just captured in what you just said, right? We had our own standard. It was great, performed beautifully, but it was also not the standard for the rest of the world. And so you are moving into adopting terrestrial and telco and IT standards because that's where the future is, and that's what we're all struggling with. Angus, your view on this, you know, end-to-end service management when you only control part of that circuit. How is that working out for service providers?
Yeah, I think it's become much more of a challenge these days. In the last sort of 10 years or so, teleports have changed their nature from being all the standalone fortresses doing their own thing with a few pipes coming in and then the uplifts going out into much more a sort of a center for federated services coming in for the teleports customers. So that means that the cloud services that Sergi talks about and other third-party, quite complex third-party services are very much part of the offering for teleport operators now. So that means for the NOC, they need to A, have the information about those third-party services, and B, be able to represent them to the customer in a way that provides the customer with a seamless service, because the customer doesn't really care whether their service is coming from the teleport or from a third party. All they care about is their service. And that's the biggest challenge really for the NOC, is that they have to deal with these third-party services, which are very, very complex. And some of the cloud services, some of the systems that are now being cloudified, A, are very immature, and B, are actually quite complex for an operator who's got to be across lots and lots of systems to get their head around. And then not only that, but to speak intelligently to the customer about issues with them. And it also calls for much better integration in terms of workflow and processes. Security is a big issue. And business continuity. If you've outsourced a large part of your operation to a third party and you don't know what their business continuity measures are, then if something happens and you lose them, what do? You've got no control. Whereas before, at least you could go and plug a box in somewhere and recover a service. You can't really do that with a cloud provider. So I think it offers huge opportunities, but with those opportunities, I think for the reasons I've said, it's quite problematic for operators.
Yeah, it is. Well, it is, and it's the story has got a long way to run. Carolyn, you said those words OSS, BSS, which got my attention because we published a digital transformation report, and one of the interviewees basically said, this is the future. If you aren't working very, very hard on that, because you're going to be in trouble, because that's like APIs, that is kind of the lingua franca of the future. You're going to need to speak OSS, BSS in order to provide service to a very big group of customers. So in terms of this end-to-end service management, what's your view of the challenge and opportunity?
Well, but basically, static DSL has always been confronted to that challenge, especially because maybe if we go a little bit back in history, when we started as resellers of satellite bandwidth. We were connected to one satellite, and we were reselling the services through a network of local distributors, ISPs in Africa. So we started in West Africa. So it means that we were already talking to, in each country, to different people, ISPs, and they were managing their end users. So already we had to integrate everything so that to make it available to them. So there were already this kind of third party. But then we started to grow, adding satellite coverages, connecting different teleports. And we started with new technology, and then we added the iDirect technology. So basically, our customers at the first time, at the first place in the value chain, where the ISPs, they needed to have this kind of, well, I want to serve a service which is the same, being new tech or iDirect, it needed for them to be the same the same visualization, the same monitoring tools, etc. So we needed really to build our platform, and that's really the biggest, the core of the platform of NextSat is really to be agnostic. It was agnostic for the satellite technology, agnostic for the satellite coverage, the frequencies, etc. We added HTS satellite, and now also when we talk about LEO and MEO coming up, for us this is also going to be just transparent, available on the NextSat platform. There is so we are busy with this. This is something that is really we have to, and we do this through APIs, connect to any third party and make it available on our portal, virtual OSS BSS, for all the actors of a value chain, of course, with different accesses and different credentials, so that the end user does not have the same vision as a teleport connected to the platform. But all the tools are throughout the entire services the same. They have the same looks and feel, and they are the way to use them is also the same. So it makes it user friendly and more more transparent. So that's really something we had since the beginning, really, and this is the way we build the platform, to be agnostic.
Well, I liked your story very much, because yes, it's the way, like all companies in your position, you know, inventing a new thing, some of it you knew what you wanted to do, and other places you just did the next thing and was like, oh, this works, let's integrate this. You said the magic word though, right? API. You've been basing this on IT standards from the beginning, which has really made probably what's made it possible for you to be so successful. Yeah, interesting. All right, let's circle back to human beings here for a moment, because they do often get left out when we're talking about network operations. For all of you, what is either your process for onboarding new NOC technicians and engineers, or keeping them up to speed, or what have you found has been most effective, whether or not they are sitting side by side in a NOC, or whether they are remote and you actually have never been face to face with them? Gosh, I guess, Carolyn, what's since you've been doing this for so long, what do you find works?
For myself, I have the smallest team, so it's gonna be shorter. Basically, the way we work, so I said we started with one guy, and he evolved. It's one of the dinosaurs of SAT ADSL. I don't know if he's listening to me, but thank you. He knows everything, so he lived also this growth. So he has been living the fact that we were a service provider, and now we become this aggregation platform. So he knows a little bit the tricks, the internal tricks. But basically, our NOC is divided in 3 layers. What we have layer 1, level 1, which is more than a help desk. It's really the support. Then layer 2, what we call network operation center guys, really the NOC, and then layer 3 is more the infrastructure, those that are responsible to create the links to the different teleports. Now, obviously, when we hire someone, we start level 1, right? Because of the complexity of NextSat. They might be people knowing very well how network operation center with iDirect works or whatever, but not especially about new tech. Even though it's probably very similar, they need to learn it. Basically, we really do like learn by doing. So you jump on a team, we work in shifts. Obviously, you are not going to be left alone in one shift, but you will be working together with someone in the shift. And again, because we have this common chat room where every problem is just put on the table, you will really learn from what is happening. We give you responsibility. Of course, they are mentored by the level 2, and they are also very much mentored by management. So they are really accompanied during their evolution by myself, obviously, as their boss, but also by my colleagues, the salespeople or the development people, really to explain them really the tricks and the insights of our platform. I'm about, for example, to hire new people in order to be able to do the 24/7, because today we are not really 24/7. There are people I've never met. There are obviously in another region, the region we do not 100% cover yet. And they will be jumping onto in the team as level 1, and we'll be learning from us. We also document everything. As I heard from Angus or Sergey, Sergey, you said about documentation. That's indeed very, very important. Things happened, incident happened, we find a way to resolve the issue. It is very important to document everything, and we document it on one platform. We have a wiki. We have well, the thing is that today we have different platforms, and we need to stress ourselves to make work of it, to centralize it on different platforms. Our team, the operations team, they like to use OneNote. I know the development they use the wiki, so sometimes you have to look at the two places. Some of them don't like wiki, so but in our team we know where to find the information, and we centralize everything, so you learn also a lot from there. So sharing information is very important in documenting things, and creating procedures, but that's not so easy.
Don't people just hate being asked to give up the platform they're using and to try a new one? It's amazing to me.
People just don't like to write procedures, and including myself.
Absolutely, nobody actually likes to write procedures. Sergey, you talk about an integration. You've had to bring together different teams from different organizations and provide that kind of unified training, mentoring, and so forth. What has your approach been?
Yes, I think here it's no magic, and it's similar across all companies. It's most important is to prepare good training documents, and now meanwhile we already have special presentations for new staff, and it's all being recorded, so that if we get only one new person joining our team, perhaps we would not be running a dedicated session for him, but he is going through all the recordings, seeing all the internal presentations, and then we can go through topics which require additional clarifications. And this is how we are getting involved into the teamwork. Plus, as Caroline mentioned, we have documentation and trying to keep it up to date. Finally, we're also having regular knowledge sessions, knowledge sharing sessions with all NOC members. So we try to allocate shifts in a way that they have a possibility to communicate with each other and discuss how we are doing things, and maybe answer some questions. This is helping a lot. And another very important topic is to try keep processes in the company standardized. It's not so easy, because we all know, especially in satellite communications, everyone wants to have something special, but we need to look for a healthy balance between flexibility and standardization, because every step aside of the standard requires additional training, additional documentation, additional clarification, additional adjustments in the CRM systems and so on. But yeah, other side, we need to be flexible.
Correct. Let me just actually turn to a question from our audience because it relates very nicely, and I love the question, which is, we're hearing, of course, a lot about virtualization and automation and so forth. What strategies are you implementing to ensure that you are not dumbing down the operators to the point where they can't really, as a stockbroker once said to me, a dog could be trained to do what I do ultimately. So this person has fears that, you know, people will forget to do things if automation becomes too robust. Do you have any experience with that, Sergey?
Yeah, that's true from one side, and I also see it with myself, because as I'm moving more into the management of the teams, I see that my qualification in technical part is going down, and if I need to cover for someone and I'm trying to resolve incidents or proceed with activations, I see, oh my God, it's so many things has changed, and for me it's now getting more complicated than for the NOC who is doing it every day. But yeah, with increasing automation, in fact, we are expecting that there would be no need to step back and do some routine processes again as we did it before. And if there is an issue with automation, it's more a question of attracting engineers who are able to resolve it promptly in time. And yeah, for the NOC stuff, it's actually more of a help to make things running easier.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things that we naturally all fear, right? But it's inevitable that as we get better at things, or as we automate systems, we're going to let go of certain skills. For instance, in America, where most cars have automatic transmissions rather than manual, the number of people who can actually shift a car with a lever from the first to the second gear is extremely small.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning here that let's say the main knowledge inside the company is slowly migrating from the NOC, from knowing all this infrastructure, towards IT, who is taking care about process automation. This is so obvious in the last couple of years.
Right. So you have skill sets you don't need. So Angus, we've been keeping you quiet for a while here, but we've got sort of two interesting questions, and you've of course got a long experience with this. So, you know, one of it is the human factor. How do you make sure that you bring people forward to be skilled at what they do, but also are there skills that need to be preserved from the wave of automation?
Well, I think that's a very interesting point about automation, because it's driving. One way an operator might say it's driving me out of a job, and another way it's driving them towards potentially more interesting and more involved and more technical work. And if that's what they want to do, then it's going the right way for them. But it is a challenge, but it's an inevitability, I think, that automation will take over the more menial tasks of running a NOC. And in terms of being able to recruit and retain, because you talked a lot about recruitment and how to recruit, but retaining good operators and good engineers is very challenging because it's such a competitive environment. And if people can work remotely, as they can more and more these days, then there's a much bigger market for people looking for jobs. What that means for the teleport operator is much harder to retain people, so you have to work harder at it. And some of the things I heard in the research was some of the best practice I sort of picked up on was really obvious stuff, I suppose, like, well, sometimes we go off for a breakfast at the end of a shift, and we meet the people coming in and we take them all for breakfast and we exchange ideas. And that idea exchange theme came across very strongly. And one teleport operator told me that they took their team to other teleport operators, even competitors, to discuss how they did operations and how they differed and how they were similar and how they strove to be the best that they could be. And I thought some of these novel ideas about how to engage, because everybody loves to go and visit another, operators, to see somebody who's doing your job in another setting is really interesting. So I think it's about those factors, but also recognition of doing a good job. Because a lot of people go, you've had an incident, and you go, whew, let's move on to the next thing. But actually, you've had an incident, and more often than not, yes, something caused the incident, and it might have been a human-related factor, but more often than not, it's not. Somebody, though, or a team of people have got the incident, got hold of it, contained it, and actually got the service back on air, and that deserves some recognition. And in fact, not having incidents deserves recognition too, because obviously things are going very stable, and if you've got a lot of change going on, then to keep everything on air during a lot of change deserves recognition. So I think that retention idea is really important. But yeah, I don't think there's a simple answer to the automation thing. I think it's the way that we're going. But it does mean that management need to keep looking for ways to entertain and involve their workforce, because at the end of the day, it's the NOC operator that the customer speaks to at 1 o'clock in the morning when their service is down. So they're representing your business, and you want them to be the best that they can be.
Exactly. There was a massive study done a few years ago in the US of what motivates employees. You know, how do you retain? How do you motivate? How do you engage in your company's culture? And the conclusion was really remarkable to me. It was not money. It was not promotion. It was not any of the things that you normally would think of, and in fact managers do think of. It's that you feel you're making progress in tasks that matter to you. And
Yeah.
one of the most powerful things you can do is to thank people for what they do. You know, who knew until this research came out. We're getting sort of toward the end of this. We've only got a couple of minutes, so I just want to ask each of you to just do a little bit of crystal ball gazing. I mean, you're all at different stages of advancing the NOC into some future. What do you think over the next 5 years? How will the NOC continue to evolve, and what perhaps unexpected changes will we see over the next 5 years from where we are today? And Angus, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, a really interesting question, which I also asked a lot of people, a lot of the interviewees during the research. So there's maybe not too many surprises here, because we've talked a lot about it already, but it is about probably consolidating more and taking advantage of creating a larger NOC, controlling more teleports and more operations geographically separate. It's also about automation and standardization, as Sergey said earlier. That's really important in order to make sure that everything fits together okay, and you can bring in new platforms and it does fit into your infrastructure. And I think the economy of scale argument means that there'll be a customer service, so that the larger the NOC gets, the more prone it is to being too paper driven and not customer driven. So the more important the human element becomes, because you're working in a bigger organization and a bigger team, and you might lose sight of the customer in that case. So that the human element will never go away. And then finally, machine learning. So machine learning to preempt what might cause an incident, but actually preempt not having an incident and recovering from it, because you recognize the events are building up. They don't cause an incident, but you recognize the picture, and the system will switch to the backup chain because it recognizes that there's a failure about to happen. So we're a long way from that still, I think, but it's coming, and it needs to come, because as you get more systems hooked into one infrastructure, the operators need all the help they can get to stop incidents from happening. And the strive for great customer experience and customer excellence, service excellence, will never cease, because the best teleport operators will be up there driving the service excellence message home as much as they can. So I think that's what possibly my crystal ball is telling me.
Well, thank you, Sergey. How about from where you sit? What does the future hold for the NOC?
Yeah, for me, I think that in future, NOC should be completely released from routine tasks. They should not be involved in activations, deactivations, service changes, and so on. They only should be dealing with incidents like resolving non-trivial issues or stepping in if, let's say, hardware change is required, but not being involved into usual routine as we have it today.
And that's because the automation systems are going to be looking after it for us? Yeah.
Yes, okay. Yes. It should be all based on automation and orchestration systems. And yeah, that's the future.
Okay, well, all I can say is Skyline Data Miner, call your office. Carolyn, the last word to you.
Well, I would like to finish with one word, which is excellence. So if we're really targeting excellence, I think virtualization anyway, automatization, standardization, all these words, they are of course key, but the biggest key here, the core really of this excellence will remain human operators, always. And to underline what Sergey said, if we want these operators to really stick to this excellence, we need to make them work in a more comfortable environment. And when I say more comfortable environment, it's not an environment where nothing happens, where you don't have a lot of work, where you just can chill, but it's where the work that you do is more interesting and you feel important. Because if you feel important, then you can provide really a good service, and you can really make the customer happy and give this high quality services.
I think that's a wonderful place to end, yes, because that will, not only will human beings never go out of style, but human beings doing something they consider important and who feel authorized to act. Yeah, that is the future. So I want to just, we have to wrap this up at this point, even though this is sort of an endless topic, but I want to thank Angus, Sergey, and Carolyn for sharing some views, but also some very hard-won experience with us on this topic of building a better NOC.
All right, thanks, Robert. So coming up, we have reports, growth, opportunities, and satellite cellular integration coming out in March. And in May, we have pros and cons of the LEO gateway business. At Satellite in March, we have our ground segment panels, one of the topics, which is this very topic, and our Teleport Awards luncheon on Tuesday, March 22nd at Satellite. Don't miss it. Please be there. And thank you all for attending.
Yes, it's your chance to meet most of the teleport operator executives in the world. So we do encourage you to come. And this is Robert Bell for WTA. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks again to our panelists. And Randall, I'll see you next time.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.